they thought I was cool just because I lived in San Francisco, and they used to call me Frisco Ike.
That was Ike Shehadeh of Ike's Love and Sandwiches. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. In this podcast, Ike shares the story of his parents, both of whom are immigrants to the U.S. His dad arrived in SF from Saudi Arabia in 1968, and his mother followed roughly a decade later. Ike grew up in the Sunset with his siblings, and he tells us about going to school and playing sports in the city back in the 80s and 90s. He went to high school in Millbrae and college at UC Davis. It was in Davis that a key ingredient to Ike's sandwiches came to be. Here's Ike.
We're actually in the neighborhood right now. We're here in the Tenderloin, and my father came to the United States in 1968. He flew in, and he was at the time a teacher at the University of Saudi Arabia, and he came here for school and for like a better life. He went to Berkeley for a little bit, UC, and so when he first came here, somebody gave him a number. He just told me this story pretty recently, but I had heard it before too. So he flies because he flew here, landed at SFO, in Millbrae, and called this number from the payphone at the airport, because that's all they had in 1968. And this guy answers and goes, "Hey," he goes, "Hey, my name is Sam. So-and-so gave me your number, and I'm here at the airport. You're supposed to be expecting me." And the guy on the other line, and I wish I remember this guy's name. The guy on the other line goes, "I have no idea, what you're talking about. However, where are you? Great. What are you wearing? Great. I'm going to come pick you up." So he picks him up, drives to the airport, drives around, remembers him from his description, picks him up, takes him to this neighborhood, Larkin and Ellis, and feeds him, gives him a place to stay, shower, all that stuff. And that was literally my dad's first night in San Francisco, 1968. A stranger picks him up from the airport, a friend of a friend, someone he had never met before until that night, and came to this neighborhood where Ike's is right now, and that's how his San Francisco life started.
I wonder if your dad, when that guy was I don't know who you are, I wasn't expecting, I wonder if your dad had an oh shit moment.
Yeah, he's what am I going to do?
Literally halfway around the world.
Yeah, right.
But it turned out awesome, it sounds like.
Yeah, it turned out great. So my father initially came here for a better life and to continue his education, even though he was already a professor in Saudi Arabia. And basically what happened, the very fast version of it, is he ended up owning the liquor store or the market from this guy that picked him up. He started working there, then worked out a deal and bought the place from him on Larkin and Ellis. I don't think it's there anymore. The market is still there. And then my father was going to school and doing this market and was studying engineering. And the professor one day goes, "Well, what are you doing?" He's telling him he's got this business and he's going to school. And this professor was like, "You should probably do the business. You can always come back to school if you want to. You're already educated." My father was probably 30 at the time.
Okay.
He had already gone through school. He was just continuing his education. He was already a professor. So he ended up doing that.
Quit school. Did the business.
Started doing the business and then started expanding on that, opening up another market on 16th and Mission, which is where dirty sauce ended up becoming invented, at 16th and Mission. So this whole random dude that picks up my dad from the airport the first night, that guy says, "Nope, never heard of you." Boom, maybe Ike's Dirty Sauce doesn't even exist. Or maybe my dad doesn't get in the market business, because I actually learned my work ethic from watching my father go to work every single day, being self-employed. Maybe if he stayed in school and didn't become self-employed and was a teacher or whatever he ended up being instead, I wouldn't have learned I want to be an entrepreneur myself.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one hell of a sliding doors story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, so I'm assuming your parents met at some point?
Yeah, so my parents, my father, they met. My parents met.
They knew each other.
And so both my parents are from Palestine. Both were born in Jerusalem.
Okay.
And they met there, but my father was here and he was not with my mother at the time. He ended up going back and they meet or whatever, and that stuff happens. And then They get married there
Oh, okay.
in Jerusalem,
Okay.
and then they come back here. I assume I was consummated over there. You know, I was
Conceived.
conceived
Yeah.
there.
Do
and
you know
born
if your
here.
mom had ever been, or did she just kind of move?
No, when my mother came here back with my father, had never been in the United States before.
Right, okay.
So San Francisco was also her first experience of the United States.
Right.
She was 17, 18 at the time. My father was 32 or 34 or something.
And this was a few years after dad's first trip in '68.
Yeah,
that
so
she
my
came?
dad moved here, came here and stayed here and moved here, bought the business, and he went back, I think, with the specific, in that culture, he specifically went there to go get married and got found my mom, and they met, they had their whatever happened, and then...
Possibly your conception.
I'm born 9 months and 1 day after the
There
day they
you
were
go.
married, so,
Yeah, there you
for sure I was not conceived in this country,
Right.
but,
Right.
but I was born here.
Has your mom shared with you her first impressions of coming here?
Yeah, she shared a little bit, so...
And do you know what year that was?
Let's see, if I was
Or
born in
roughly.
78, and we were definitely here by then, so she either came in 77 or 78.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, my mother comes here and doesn't speak English. I know she told me how she learned English was basically watching Sesame Street and stuff with me
Right.
when I'm a kid and watching PBS. And that's how she learned how to speak English. Even her friends that were here that she got introduced to through my father's sphere of influence, most of them spoke to her all in Arabic. So that's their first language.
Yeah.
Both my parents. So she didn't have that much opportunity to practice English other than with some people that may have been able to speak English a little bit. But so watching PBS. And
Hell
so
yeah.
she was also young, 18. So I was born, she was 18, maybe 19. So she's 18, new country, new language, and mom.
Right.
And you got to take care of this guy, right?
Yeah.
So, and then my father's at work 7 days a week because he owns his own market and he's his own employee and he doesn't go to work, we don't eat.
Right.
So then my father's also doing that. So she's basically by herself there. And
Are you an only child? Do you have siblings?
no. So my parents together had, so I'm the oldest, and then they had a sister after me, and then a brother, and then another sister.
Okay.
So growing up in San Francisco, I grew up with 3 siblings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I don't think I have any other questions about your parents,
Okay.
but yeah, let's hear about your life besides watching Sesame Street.
All right.
What was it like? You had mentioned earlier that you grew up in the Sunset, is that right? Or
Yeah, so
Okay.
we grew up. My father's house was on 33rd in Noriega. He bought that. I'm pretty sure before they got married, and then when we moved, or when
It's a cool
my mom
area.
moved here, then we were there. So it was on Noriega between 33rd and it was on 33rd between Moraga and Noriega.
Got it.
So on 33rd. And that's where I grew up, the house we grew up in, and I remember just being there. The sunset was, freaking way different than it is now.
I was gonna say way foggier and colder and just different. Yeah.
Yeah, it was sweatshirt or sweater weather every day.
Yep.
And I remember when I eventually, and I don't know if I'm skipping ahead, but when I learned later on that if I was going to leave that area, that I needed to make sure I had a shirt underneath my sweater or sweatshirt so I could just take off my sweatshirt.
Yep.
And then have my t-shirt underneath. Otherwise, it'd be too hot in the other areas of the city.
It's like the reverse tourist thing when they
Yeah.
come here in July and they're in shorts and shit, and it's no.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like? The sunset. What kind of things did you do?
Well, so let's see. When did I start doing things? Well, I started hanging out at this park on 29th and Lawton. It's still there, Sunset Rec Center. And that was my introduction into sports and arts and crafts and other stuff like that. So I started probably going there around 7, 8. And it was walking distance, so 29th, so 4 blocks. And then Lawton, 3? So, no, probably less than that. It's probably 5 blocks away from my house.
Okay.
So I went there, and then eventually, when I was 10 and 11 and 12, I just started going there in the summers just by myself, either to play basketball, which I was freaking terrible at, or I played on the soccer team for that. Actually, most of the sports I played growing up, other than for school, I played for the Sunset Rec Center
Right.
team where they played against other parks around the city. Yeah, forget what the name of the league was, but we played against like West Sunset and South Sunset and McCoppin and all these other parks, and each would field a team. So I played soccer. That was, I think, the first sport that I actually played on a team.
Did you like it?
No, I hated it. Well, I'll tell you, I can't say that I didn't give soccer a chance. What happened is the first day of our game, and I'm like 8. So I got these cleats on, and I'm running late. So I'm running on concrete with the cleats, and I'm running because I'm like, oh man, coach is gonna chew me out. Like, it's my first day. I don't want to get, yelled at or whatever. Not that I don't even remember the coach, so I don't even think he was like that. But I was like, I need to get there. So I'm running, and I go to turn and I've never even had cleats on before in my life. So I skid on the concrete, and I just slide, and I get this like road rash on my left side of my leg. So I'm like, oh man, this is friggin' terrible. And then I go out in there and play soccer, and nobody told me about shin guards.
Oh God.
So I spent the next like 30 or 45 minutes getting kicked in the shin with a whole bunch of other 8 and 9-year-olds that are uncoordinated and just like running around and kicking.
Yeah.
So my shins were destroyed. My leg was terrible, and I was like, that's it, I quit. It's the only sport I ever quit, and I gave it one day, so I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, but it kind of chewed you up.
I got,
right?
That was a terrible day. If I had shin guards, maybe it would have went different. Maybe I could have just handled the road rash or whatever.
And if someone had told you, it's no big deal if you're late, dude.
Yeah. Or whatever. Like, if I just walked in,
Yeah.
Like, if I was a superstar soccer player and just showed up in my fake fur coat and just, like, walked in all prima donna-y and then had shin guards, maybe I'd be a superstar soccer player.
It was clearly...
So also, good thing that didn't happen, because sandwiches wouldn't have happened.
Exactly, yeah. If you just had the right attitude.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, that's up until you said about...
That was like 8, 9.
8 or 9, okay. How about... did you go to public schools, or tell us about your schooling?
Yes, so for preschool, I went to a place called Playmates, also in the way outer Sunset. It was like on 40th, maybe 40-something, and like way out there, Charavel-ish, Santiago-ish, Yoloa-ish, something like that. And for elementary school, actually went to Alamo Elementary on 22nd and Clement. That is the sandwich, which is why it's on the menu, the Alamo Elementary. And so I went there, which was not in our district, so sneaky deaky parents gave us an address on that side. I don't know why they decided that. I don't know if Alamo was a good school or something back then. But I went to Alamo. We were the alligators. Our theme was be a friend, so be a friend. Then I went to private school for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in the Sunset at Holy Name, and that's 39th and Lawton. So I used to walk to that school every single day. And so and then that's actually when I started becoming a cool kid. I think we talked about cool kid earlier, because I started playing sports, and what I noticed I'm very diminutive in size. I'm like 5'2", and was not ripped like I am now, right? But definitely not back then. So, and I was probably not even 5 feet tall until high school. So I learned from a young age, if I wanted the other guys to accept me as part of the crew, that I needed to try harder and be good at sports, because that's what the guys liked. In fact, back then it didn't matter about being suave with the ladies or whatever, because we didn't like ladies back then. And so that wasn't cool. So I went out there and I was like, I'm going to really try harder and hustle and all that stuff. So I started playing basketball and baseball and football, and I actually was kind of good at some of those things.
Did you like any of those?
So playing baseball, this is where being really short worked.
Yeah.
Is I would get walked like, I don't know. There would be times where in the whole game, I was like, this pitcher has no control, and I just stand there the whole time and not even swing the bat once.
Because your strike zone is like that big.
The whole game.
Yeah.
So I'd get on base like 5 out of 5 times some games, or 3 out of 4 times some games. And then I was fast because I'm little and low to the ground, and I knew how to like slide.
Stealing bases.
Yeah, stealing bases and stuff like that. Once we allowed to steal bases. So I really enjoyed getting on base and then like messing around with the catch, because as a 10-year-old and a 11-year-old, some leagues didn't allow steals, which of course, like, how's an 11-year-old gonna throw anybody out, right? However, if like there's a wild pitch, you're allowed to run. So I'd just be like, wild pitch, and just take off. Like, and there was like a cheat code. Like if I ran, and then it ended up being a wild pitch, then you get the base. But if I ran and it wasn't a wild pitch, I would have to run back.
Oh, right.
So you could cheat because almost 0% chance you're gonna get caught stealing.
Just run anyway.
And I would just run, and then if there was a wild pitch, then it'd be like a free base. So I really like that. I really like scoring runs, and so that was fun. Baseball was fun. Football, a little less fun because people like to hit you, and which is what you're supposed to do. And I was definitely small, so then I started learning like how to take hits. Then I started doing martial arts when I was 12 on Terraville in 42nd, right across the street from
Riptide.
Riptide,
Yeah.
yes, right across the street from there. And once I started doing that and actually literally getting hit, then I was like, oh, I can handle like any sport because I don't. Conditioning over time, you get punched in the ribs or punched in the face a bunch. It doesn't hurt as much.
It's like
anymore.
immunity almost,
Yeah.
right? You build up a tolerance.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
And then same thing with the basketball. Like I'm low, and it's a tall human sport as a generalization. And so they're dribbling, and I'd literally be like, oh, the ball's right there, and I just take it. So I'd get like I was terrible every single. I'm trying to think, when the hell did I actually score my first basket?
Right.
Probably not until like I was 14 or something. Like even though I played from like 9, 10, 11, I'd
years.
shoot a lot and either miss a lot or get swatted a lot. So I learned just play defense and then
Steal
pass.
the ball.
Yeah, so I'd steal the ball. Like I remember there'd be games where the person that I would be guarding, even if they were like the best player on the team, as long as they weren't like 6'5", which is a possibility even though
Sure.
you're 12. As long as they were, I'd say, like, say if they were 5'9" and shorter, which is tall for a 12-year-old, I was able to guard them because if they put the ball on the ground, which is everybody when they're 12, then they're going to get it taken from me, or I'd harass them enough that they needed to get the ball off. So that was also fun, like playing defense and
you
stuff like
found
that.
some niches in these sports by being kind of sneaky, sounds like.
Very sneaky.
But
which-
also using all your advantages. So it's like
Exactly.
your physical.
And so I've been
advantage.
doing that since young age, but then it also turned me into being the cool growing up in the city. All of a sudden I was like, oh, nobody, like people would pick me last, like literally. I was like, oh, there's a girl that's my same height that like it's her first time ever playing basketball. Sure, we'll take her over Ike, or whatever. Oh, it's some guy that whatever, and they just like pick me last all the time, and then all of a sudden, there I was. And they're like, well, actually, you know what? I really don't like it when Ike plays defense on me, so I'm just going to pick him so he doesn't, like, steal the ball from me every time.
Right.
Yeah.
Take away that threat.
Yes.
So now it's like your early teenage years, and now you're kind of cool, or?
Definitely. I mean, especially, I will say this. When I started doing the martial arts part, which I think was a big changer for me, because then I did definitely live in fear of getting beat up, whether that was at school, like from kindergarten-ish to probably 7th grade, I would get in at least one fight a week, and especially in elementary school, and by fight I mean getting beat up. There was not a fight in the traditional sense.
Right.
And sometimes it'd be 2-on-1 too, even though like the one would have done it. And I mean, it's just a thing. So I actually, even back then when it used to happen often, I remember thinking like, oh man, now when they were beating me up, kind of like we were talking about with the martial arts, it like helped me playing football because I didn't have to worry about somebody coming up and choking me from behind because like I get hit all the time. So over time, it made me stronger.
And more confident.
I don't want to like, what do I want to call it? I don't want to like enable bullies or whatever, but like, I look back now, I can totally see a lot of benefits that translated into martial arts. When I tried out for, went to the state championships in martial arts, tried out for the Olympics in wrestling, and all this was like, I was like, oh, I got beat up for like 5 years, why not? But once I started doing the martial arts and I no longer had the fear of getting beat up, not that I didn't get beat up, but I didn't have the fear of it anymore. Because one thing is growing up in the Sunset in the 80s, and was that it was like I was afraid of like I mean, there was a lot of gangs out there back then when I was growing up. And I don't remember the specific, like, groups that were the gangs, but I remember, like, oh, I better watch out because, like, this gang might beat me up. And I also don't want to mention them right now in case they want to beat me up now, right?
Right.
But, like, this gang might beat you up, or this gang, or these gangs are fighting each other. If you're out in that territory, you better watch out about them, these blocks and stuff like that. And that was definitely a real thing for me growing up.
Can we go back to, I just want to hear a little bit about your, like, high school years, both your experience and then, like, meaning your experience in school, but also, what was the city like? Like, were you starting, I feel like teenage years is when you're starting to, like, get out with your friends and, like, go to other parts of town, maybe go to, I don't know, down the peninsula or whatever. Like, were you doing any of that kind of stuff?
Cool. Yeah.
What was it like?
So I went to...
This would be 90s, right? Kind of
I went to high school, like, 90... I graduated in 96, so 96, what, 95, 93, 92, whatever, 93, right? Something like that. Graduated Holy Name, I think, 92, I think.
So you went to Holy Name for
I went to Holy Name...
no, middle.
8th grade.
That's middle.
So after 8th grade, I was enrolled to go to Sacred Heart Prep, or I don't know, Sacred Heart Cathedral, the one over here in the city, and but I ended up not going. My parents decided, I don't know, maybe they didn't want this the private school experience or the Catholic school experience, and I ended up going to Mills High School in Millbrae for my high school.
Okay.
Again, sneaky parents used a different address. I did one of my cousins that I'm really, really, really close with, and one of my mentors as far as business goes, lived out there, and so we just used his address, and I went to Mills High School for all 4 years for high school. And so actually this is another part where, like, the cool kid theme came in. Because I lived in the city, I was automatically by default, like, cooler than somebody that lived in Millbrae or Burlingame. You know, no offense to Millbrae and Burlingame, I love both of those places. And we got an Ikes in Burlingame, but, like, they thought I was cool just because I lived in San Francisco, and they used to call me Frisco Ike. So my experience there was, I mean, I was probably accepted right away there, even though I didn't know a single person at that school. And actually, it ended up turning out that there was a guy that I went to junior high, or I went to preschool with, that was 1 year ahead of me at Mills. And I was like, oh, wow, like, I actually know this guy. So, but I essentially knew nobody there, but by association to the city was just accepted right away. And I remember my first day at school, I was like, oh, wow, I heard first days of school is supposed to be terrible. And mine was decent-ish. Once they found out I was from the city, it was like all gravy. So, like, I got the city reputation that helped me out even in a time of really, really, really tough part. I remember one of my favorite classes I took my freshman year. I took, back then it was called home economics. I don't know what that class would be called now. Yeah. But I was basically home ec, which also allowed for me to be part of the cool group or accepted group, because that whole everybody in home ec was like basically a senior trying to slack off their
they needed
their
one more
year.
credit. Yeah.
And so it was like, here's a science class that was easy. Gonna get easy credit for. So it was me as a 14-year-old and 13-year-old with like 18-year-old, like, oh my god, and 17-year-olds, and they can drive, and so I was also like, that just like started the whole thing. Like, I'm from the city, and I hung out with all the seniors. Like, dude, who is this guy? And like the legend grew, kind of like how way later, like, Ike's legend would grew. It's like a whole bunch of, oh, he hangs out with celebrities, or this award, or he's over here, and then like it just created this big thing.
An aura.
Ikes.
It's like an
yes,
aura.
Yes, an aura. Yes.
Well, also in home ec though, did you guys cook or bake?
Yes, we did a lot of cooking and learned about stuff like that. And
was that your entree into that world?
Well, I first started messing around in the kitchen when I was like 5 years old and 6 years old. So my mother, going back a little bit in time, is my mother would make breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and but I needed more than that, or I thought I did, or I don't know. I just ate a lot, especially for my size and my age. So mother was like, "Hey, here's a refrigerator. Here's how a microwave works. Here's how the stove works." And I was like 5 and 6 and 7. Here's how the pots. Here's the pan. Here's all these things. You can't use these knives, whatever. But like, here's all these things. And if you want anything more than breakfast, lunch, and dinner, here you go.
I love it. It's like your mom was solving so many problems. for her to keep cooking,
Yes.
for you to not be hungry, and also for you to learn something and to like take care of yourself.
Yeah. So
That's awesome.
I would turn, instead of like heating up stuff. I remember I would bust out the pan, heat it up, put in the leftovers, because for me, like heating it up tasted better than microwaving it. And so, but then I was like, oh, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. So then I just started like toasting bread and putting in like lamb in the middle or chicken in the middle or even like rice and yogurt and like just making pita sandwiches or making just sliced bread sandwiches and putting mayonnaise and mixing sauces, using salad dressings and cheese and meats and condiments. And so I just started making sandwiches out of everything. So that was my first foray into like making sandwiches. And
at like 6 or 7 or how old were you?
I was like, 5, 6, 7. I remember my masterpiece when I was 5. Masterpiece. Oh,
like you'll never do anything better than that.
Oh, but I mean, when as a 5-year-old, was I used to make toast the bread, obviously, peanut butter, and mayonnaise. Now, I thought it was like the holy grail of sandwiches, but as I was bringing it to class, as a kindergartner and a first grader, I forget when it was, but the kids made fun of me for it. And I felt ridiculed, and like I said, I was already getting beat up every day and all these other stuff. So I like stopped making the peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwich. Maybe that was a good thing because I would eat that like 5 days a week for school, and then it allowed me to do other things because I didn't want to get made fun of, basically. Although now, and I haven't remade it since, unfortunately, because maybe I should. But I feel like if today I was like, hey, I'm going to do a peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwich, and it's good, I feel like the world, especially San Francisco, would be like, oh, well, I mean, I never thought of it, but because Ike came up with it, so maybe I should go back, like, just revisit it, mayonnaise and peanut butter toasted on some toasted wheat.
The holidays are coming up. You got time to screw
mess around at home, right? I'm, you know what? I keep saying I'm going to do it, and then I keep forgetting.
And maybe that's the Frisco Ike.
There you go. The Frisco Ike is the peanut butter. I love how you're thinking, Jeff.
So you graduated from
Mills. I went to Mills. I graduated in 96. Went to UC Davis. There's a long story about that, but we'll skip that. I don't necessarily. It doesn't really gonna help this conversation as much. But I went to Davis, and I got kicked out like sophomore year for essentially not going. But
that's that nightmare that I still have. It's like I'm back in college and I just like forget to go.
Yeah. Well, it was I was enrolled and I wasn't taking classes. I mean, it was like a replay of my freshman year in high school where I was taking like home ec and stuff like that, but I was taking drama, creative writing, accounting, and I was a computer science and engineering major, which I mean, this is 1996, 1997, 1998, so I was like ahead of my time. I was like, oh, I'm going to study these things, and I don't know. I didn't think that I like knew I was doing, but I just that field sounded really cool, and maybe if I did that, I would be way not doing sandwiches right now.
Right.
Especially getting in at that young of an age or that early in.
Or you might be doing freeze-dried sandwiches.
Right.
Or something
Exactly.
I'd dehydrated.
Be getting ready to put sandwiches on Mars with Elon, right? And so I essentially get kicked out because I was taking like 12 units, and you need to take 13 units minimum. And my what do you call it? Guidance counselor kept emailing me, and this is back when like you'd only get like 3 emails, so it's not like I didn't see it. I just saw it, and I was like, I don't really want to do that. No, I don't want to call her. No, I don't want to call her. I mean, it sounds like I was like, I don't want to talk to my guidance counselor. Then I tried to sign up for classes, and they're like, you don't go to school anymore. I called her up, and she was like, well, we messaged you like 115 times. Well, it was like really like 7 or 8 times, but I never answered. And so then I didn't go to school, but I used it as an opportunity to go into business directly for myself. But let me flash forward because
sure.
When I was my freshman year in Davis, because the longer story that I didn't tell was I actually only applied to one school, and it was UC Davis because I was like, it was my dream school to go to. It was for me also it was like my safety school and my number 1 school. So looking at everything, I was like, I'm gonna get in for sure, and then I ended up not getting in. So I didn't have a backup plan. Finally, I get them to accept me because apparently they had some whatever the reason they ended up accepting me, but it was way later in the normal acceptance period that all the dorms were taken.
Okay.
So I ended up living off campus with a couple of sophomore sorority girls.
Another thing that freshmen don't
Yeah, they don't get to
do.
do. So I lived off campus as a freshman with a couple of sorority gals that all they ever tried to do was get me drunk all the time. But since I moved away from home and I wasn't on campus, so I didn't get the food plan and everything, my mom was like, all right, again, my mom jumps into my life from a culinary standpoint, and she goes, here's a rice cooker, here's this, here's a spice rack, here's all these things. We're going to give you money like as an allowance and stuff like that, but we're not going to give you enough money so that you can eat out every meal. I want you to learn how to sustain for yourself.
Okay.
So I would like budget and go, okay, I don't remember the amount, but I'd be like, okay, I can eat here, here, and here. That means these other like 5 meals I need to make. And so during that time, messing around with the spice rack and using the rice cooker to make like stews and boil down sauces, I came up with a lot of amazing like mixed and matched tastes that I ended up bringing to Ike's later.
Right.
And I ended up noticing that I really loved mixing spices and making sauces, which, as you know, is a real big one of the differentiators at Ike's and one of our specialties here. So if it wasn't for me not getting into college the first time and then finally having them accept me, but then having to live off campus, then also another part, like now I get to create great sauces and bring them up to Ike's.
That was Ike Shehadeh. On the next episode of Storied San Francisco, Ike will tell us all about opening his sandwich shops. Please join us for part 2 this Wednesday. Music for Storied San Francisco is by Otis McDonald. Photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. The show is hosted and produced by me. Michelle and I have produced more than 140 episodes over the last 3 years, and you can find them all at our website, storiedsf.com. While you're there, please check out our store, where in the month of December, we're donating proceeds of all sales to Supply Hope Info, a new nonprofit helping students with distance learning. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where you can like, comment, and share the stuff we put out. Find our shows just about everywhere you can listen to podcasts, including most recently BFF.FM's new podcast network. Please subscribe to stay up to date on all the content we publish. We love feedback, so if you have any, our email is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Stay strong, stay safe, wear a mask, and stay healthy.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcasts.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.